this might be a little more applicable to like patrol guys, but
Okay.
how do you guys feel about, so the whole purpose of Miranda, especially when we're talking about juveniles, is in Indiana we have to have meaningful consultation. We cannot question if a kid's in custody. That's the way it works here. How
Yeah.
do you feel? I ran into sometimes when I see it like an officer, they will be questioning a kid, but they'll tell them, hey, you don't have to be here right now, and you truly don't have to answer any questions. You're free to go, which kind of is in line of Miranda a little bit. And the courts have said, at least in Indiana, I mean, the kid can't understand it because that's what the purpose of having the parent is there. So that's like they're like kind of skirting around Miranda a little bit, but
Well,
they're telling them they're free to
they're
go.
skirting around Miranda or this Indiana requirement because they're trying to. That's called taking the custody out of detention, right? If a person is detained, but they also is arrest-like custody, well, then you're gonna need
And say
Miranda.
say there's no custodial treatment though. Say there's no handcuffs. Say it truly is. I mean, it's pretty minimal, right?
Yeah, but that's a great conversation because first of all, the Indiana rules, like all these other rules, right? California, Washington, and so forth, which they love their juvenile criminals. If they're not in custody, these rules do not apply. There's no state out there that says if you even want to talk to a person, I'm sorry, a juvenile, and it's likely they can incriminate themselves, you must do XYZ, right? There's no state that does that. So you're at SRO, right? And you talk to a kid in school and be like, hey, I heard you were doing something last week. What, or you were out in XYZ town, whatever. What happened over there? Oh yeah, we were burging cars. Well, if the kid's not in custody, it's coming in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that they would bring up age as a relevant factor, though. Yes.
Age is always a relevant factor. That's a U.S. Supreme Court case, but it's not a deal killer. But the thing is, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is these juvenile rules are pretty strict, right? Indiana, California is probably the strictest. And if they're not in custody, then then you're doing all these things and you're hey, just so you know, you're not in trouble or you're not going to jail, you're not in custody, no handcuffs, public area, they're not in the principal's office. These are things that help take that kid out of custody, right? And
Sure.
especially, you ready for this? Especially if the kid's not arrested. Because if the kid is ultimately arrested, the courts kind of lean towards, hey, he's probably in custody to begin with. But if he says incriminating things and just ultimately walks away, it's a hard sell to say he was also in custody under Miranda. Would you agree with that?
I agree. Let's flip the fact though. Say they are a suspect. I mean, still
Well,
pretty minimal. No custodial treatment at all. No handcuffs, but they are kind of a suspect. What do you think?
well, look, the same rules because the Supreme Court addressed that issue in somebody help me out here. What's the Supreme Court case that talked about the fact that you suspect him of a crime
Yeah,
is
your,
not
your subjective thoughts aren't translated.
somebody knows that case. It's the Supreme Court case on that. Anyway, so so here's the main thing is, obviously a liberal, I'm just saying, like a liberal court will try they'll try to like make that person in custody somewhere. They're just gonna, that's their mentality. But if you look at it objectively, as long as the cop did not convey that that person was in custody or that they were going to be arrested, then it should be irrelevant. However, I don't know where in Indiana you work, whether it's Gary, Indiana versus the other places, right? But it shouldn't legally matter. It shouldn't legally matter as long as it's not communicated. Does that make sense?
Awesome. That's perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.